on Paso Robles District 1 with the Paso Robles City Council. And yesterday we had 3 men. Today we have 3 women. And we have Sharon Roden, Linda George, and Chris Beal. As we have been doing, the candidates have provided the questions. Each candidate will be starting with their own question. And we again drew straws to see who would go first. This time, Sharon Roden won the straw. She pulled the long straw, so she is going first. We're going to start with each of the candidates telling you a little bit about themselves, and then we'll get into the questions. Sharon, thank you for being here today.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
And can you tell me why you're running, what you think, what you will do for the why you are running, and why you are the best candidate for District 1?
Well, as a Cal Poly graduate, I've always utilized the learn by doing motto in my approach to most activities in life, whether it was managing our family farm, training over 1,000 people over 30 years, to serving on the American Pistachio Growers, first as a board member and then as their chair. I consistently demonstrated a commitment to fairness and integrity, addressing issues impacting farmers across state lines with the same passion and care as if it were my own. I served as a board member of the Coalition as a Sustainable Delta, representing small family farms within Kern County. The Coalition is an ad hoc group of water users who depend on the Delta for a large portion of their water supplies. Water is the lifeblood of agriculture, industry, and communities, and should be protected from misuse and waste. When I was appointed to the City Council last October, I knew I had a steep learning curve, so I hit the ground running. I wanted to learn as much as I could in a very short period of time, and I did not spend the usual 1-hour tour of the city's facilities and projects, but most ebbed into 2- and 4-hour tours in addition to return visits for follow-up questions. I'm proud that my supporters include a county supervisor, school board trustee, COO of the second largest pistachio processor in the world, and an executive director of AFL-CIO Local 52. They may have lives and political opinions which differ from mine, but support my ability and desire to represent all, no matter their affiliation. They understand, as I do, that this is not a partisan elected position, but a representative for all of our community.
Thank you very much, Sharon. And now, Chris Beal, thank you for being here today. And can you tell us why you are running and why will you be the best candidate for District 1?
Thanks so much, Karen. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you and to speak to the listeners. My name's Chris Beal. I grew up here in Paso Robles. I'm a Bearcat. I'm a Cal Poly Mustang. I have fond memories of dressing up for Pioneer Day and celebrating special occasions at Joshua's. I was fortunate enough to raise my son here. I bought a little house. He went to the same schools that I had. And now that I've kind of moved on to this next chapter, he's all grown and I've retired from my job. I think it's a really good opportunity to put my skills to work for the community in a different way. I ran a small nonprofit called the Central Coast Vineyard Team for 23 years. We worked on sustainable farming. I brought together regulators, government agencies, farmers, environmentalists for 23 years. And one of the skills that I realized that I had is that all of these groups don't necessarily work with each other too well. And so my job was to always be learning people's perspectives, getting them together, and finding common ground, even though, sometimes the interests were very different. And I actually think that there's a strong connection with that and my knocking on doors. Our district is very diverse. Union Road is different than 30th Street, is different than River Oaks, is different than downtown. All of those conversations are different. The demographics are different. People's needs are different. So I think the skill set I bring is really good. I'm really serving and I'm running to serve so that we can have a new voice on the council. 60% of the town is under the age of 50. We have a lot of workers, working families, the next generation, and our hardworking residents deserve a voice on the council, and I hope to be that voice. The decisions we make now will affect the town that we are passing on to our children and our grandchildren. And I feel very strongly that we have a responsibility to address the quality of life issues for our hardworking residents so that they can thrive in the town we love.
Thank you very much, Chris Beal. And now, Linda George, thank you for being here today. And why are you running for city council, and what makes you the best candidate for District 1?
Hi, Karen and listeners. Thank you, Robles, for having me here today. Most of all, I was not planning to run for city council until after the interviews. All three of us interviewed for that position, and I was in the top 3 of the candidates on the second cycle. My concern since that the incumbent has been appointed, there has been a lot of rubber stamping decisions and a lack of listening to us, District 1. I know when I personally emailed her, the only time she responded was about the FBO. And since November of last year, the reason why I'm running is because, and the fact that I worked for the state for 30 years. I understand government process. I worked for Caltrans. I worked for DSS. I worked for SSA. I understand process of making laws. I've been a lobbyist since 2009, and I choose my battles wisely. If something happens to me, it's happening to a lot of people. Therefore, I will work on any campaign that improves the life of Robles, included the state. For instance, my property, I was able to get HCD come in and upgrade our property. Did the council or the incumbent do that? No, I did that. And so I want to continue my work through the district and help North County, Spring Street to 24 to 101 to grow up, as I said in the interviews, with the rest of the city. I believe that our district has the exact same ability to grow and to have a better life. And that's why I'm running, because I know how to initiate, amend, make laws that would tailor into your lives, not mine. This isn't about me. This is about you, District 1. Your lives better. And I have 30 years of experience since I was 18 years old on how to do it. Thank you, Karen.
Thank you very much, Linda. And now we're going to go to the first question of the day. Sharon Roden, Measure I-24 is a November 2024 ballot measure. If approved by Paso Robles voters, the measure will maintain and not increase the existing half-cent local sales tax that is set to expire in March 31st, 2025. Currently known as Measure E12, Measure I-24 is anticipated to generate $6.5 million annually for the city's general fund. Since 2012, 100% of this revenue, about $78 million, has been allocated to local road repairs. Given the estimates of deferred road repairs are $350 million, would you support the passage of I-24? And if you do support the passage, if you do not support the passage of I-24, what areas of the budget would you cut or utilize in order to get the roads repaired?
We have 152 lane miles in the city limits. And unbeknownst to a lot of people, and most of us drive one line going to work, going here, we don't see all the repairs that are done or maintenance. In fact, 48% of this system has been touched, and 44 separate road repairs, maintenance, or reconstruction projects have been completed since 2012, using a combination of E12, J20, gas tax, and grants. This is, as we stated, this is not a new tax. It takes the place of a half-cent tax of E12. The difference is there's no sunset. This would allow the city to potentially borrow against the revenues of I-24 in order to accelerate local street repairs and complete repairs at a faster pace while maintaining existing streets. That's an option, but I'm not sure it is necessary at this point. Our staff has done an excellent job in seeking out grants and prioritizing which roads needed repair in what order, utilizing our funds efficiently. This half-cent here in the city is a general fund tax. Included items that are taxed are cars, household goods, restaurant meals, and alcohol. Necessities of life are exempt. 100% of the E12 revenue has been utilized for road repair and maintenance. And the city's Supplemental Tax Oversight Committee provides oversight of the expenditures of the supplemental sales tax revenues to ensure that they are being spent on community priorities established by the City Council. What if we don't pass I-24? What would we have to utilize more of J-20 that we utilize for police and fire? That's not acceptable to me. The effects right now is currently the city is not filling 8 public safety positions, including the 3 paramedic firefighters and 3 fire engineers, and an emergency services training officer and 3 street maintenance positions until after the election. I think it's imperative that we pass I-24, and if you want more information, you can go to the PasoRobles.com and put in I-24, and I think there's an FAQ there.
Thank you very much, Sharon Roden. And now we're going on to Chris Beal. And I'm not going to give the full explanation, but there's I-24 is a ballot measure. It's going to extend the existing half-cent sales tax. Are you in favor of extending the sales tax? And if not, where should money be taken for road repair?
Thanks, Karen. I am in favor of supporting I-24, extending the current, half-cent tax. Sharon already mentioned a lot of kind of the facts and figures that help justify that. Staff and consultants have sort of identified, $350 million of anticipated costs for maintenance and repairs. We have 150 lane miles of roads that are under, the Paso Robles jurisdiction and Paso Robles responsibility. And certainly, roads are a concern to our people. So, somebody was telling me, I think I was talking to somebody in fire, and he was saying, it's kind of like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. You kind of just, you start at one end and you keep going to the end, but by the time you get to the end, you need to come back to the beginning and, go over it again. So our road situation is like that. The other point I'd like to emphasize is that our visitors pay, this sales tax also. So, for, dollars that we're paying as residents, we're also getting that from our visitors who are helping fund our road repair and maintenance projects. In addition, if we have some funds that we can count on, we can leverage those funds for grant funds. If we don't have that funding source, then we are certainly much less competitive for funding for the roads projects. And yes, our public safety representatives fully support the I-24 extending that tax. And if you're really into information, I highly suggest you go to the website. The city has put on a new kind of fact sheet about Measure I-24, and also the Tax Oversight Committee packets are wonderful because they break down every project by dollar, by funding source, by status, whether it's in process or completed. So I would encourage people to look and see what's going on with our roads.
Thank you very much, Chris Beal. And now Linda George, the same question. Regarding Measure I-24, the half-cent sales tax, it extends the sales tax now. Are you in favor of that? And if you're not in favor, how should they look at getting road repairs done?
Okay, thank you, Karen. I am not against I-24. I think I said this at City Council, is that the only way I would have voted for it is if it had a 5-year sunset clause or a sunset clause. Not only that, a trigger clause that the staff doesn't complete all the projects in the time that they state, and or the fact that they automatically extend it. So what I'm trying to say is that the incumbent voted for it to be indefinitely, and I feel like that's an abuse of taxpayer dollars. In other words, we should have a sunset clause on all tax issues so that the people can decide, especially after the paid parking debacle. It took us 2,400 signatures to get that illegal program that the incumbent voted for and voted against BBK giving us money back. The other concern I have is that the incumbent is also on the Tax Oversight Committee, and I don't understand through all of these processes why there was not a Plan B. So that is my concerns. And if it doesn't pass, it's very evident we're going to have to use the general fund. And that's going to make it very difficult for our roads to get repaired in a timely manner. So I would say that this no plan B is almost like a shakedown of tax dollars. It's a threat to our public safety because we're not going to be able to afford some officers and some fire department. That is not okay. I think that they had plenty of time, and the incumbent's been in there since November. She had plenty of time to guide the staff to make a plan B. However, I will say this again, I am not against I-24. I think that for sure, that the general fund, that the tax money has 100% been used for the roads. I just think there should be a trigger clause. If that is ever spent on something else, that this automatically ceases and suspends this tax.
Can I respond right quickly?
Yes, of course.
Just a correction. I'm not on the supplemental tax committee.
Your name is there?
I'm a liaison.
That's what I'm saying.
No, you said I was on the committee.
You're
I'm not on the committee. But
you're a liaison for the city council who is to guide. The job of the counselor is to guide the staff into success, not sit and rubber stamp decisions.
Thank you very much. And we're going to get now to another question. You guys are moving quite quickly. Thank you very, very much. Now, this question is for you to go first, Chris. What business interests do you have that would present an actual or perceived conflict of interest with city business? Right now, we're having a debate between Sharon Roden, Linda George, and Chris Beal, all candidates for District 1 in the Paso Robles City Council. Chris, what business interests do you have that would present an actual or perceived conflict of interest with city business?
Right. This was actually one of the questions that I offered because it's something that I hear at the doors with people. And, one of the things I'm hearing from people is this kind of really need to rebuild and develop the public trust. And so I thought the issues of conflict was important. So I do own a house, and I live in the house in the Olive Street area. So if the rezoning were to ever come up before the council, I would have to rezone, or I would have to recuse from that. I don't own any long or short-term rentals in the city of Paso. I currently, in terms of my income, I currently have a small contract with another nonprofit doing agricultural education and outreach on dry farming in vineyards. I don't see that as being a conflict. And then in addition, I recently, like within the last several months, I declined a consulting contract to work on sustainable groundwater issues because I didn't want there to be an appearance of a conflict or have there be a problem were I elected. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Chris Beal. Linda George, same question. What business interest do you have that would present an actual or perceived conflict of interest with city business?
Thank you, Karen, for asking that question. Roblins, in District 1, I want to assure you the only interest I have is in representing District 1. I am you. I don't own a farm. I don't own a house. I own a trailer. I live right here in the heart of Spring Street, 3126, right across the way here from KPRL. My only interest is you. And I want you to understand and know I cannot be bought. I cannot be swayed, and I am unmovable. And if you voice something that you want for our district, I will remain that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda George. And Sharon Roden, same question. What business interest do you have that would present an actual or perceived conflict of interest with city business?
Well, I've chosen to invest in our community. My business partner and I own 2 vacation rentals in the T-zone. And so I have to pull straws when we're talking about vacation rentals. And the same with the Olive Street that Chris has faced. Because we've chosen to invest in certain areas that we may be excluded for conversations. Otherwise, I don't have any other conflict.
Thank you very much, Sharon. This is Linda's question, and I'm going to have Linda answer it first. SMART goals. What do they stand for, and when did staff start the new method of achieving goals?
Hi, thanks, Karen, for the question. I brought up this question because I was privy to see the budget brief before it was given to the council and others. And it was this year that the staff decided, probably the council too, to start with the SMART goals. And what they stand for are specific, measurable, achieve, time-bound. And these are really great goals to have, because with specificity, if I could say the word, I think that's the key to most of our ordinances in our city and our future and everything else, is that we be very specific in what we want Paso Robles to look like. For myself, I like to see the charm of Paso Robles be preserved. I don't want to see the Olive Street Hotel. I don't want to see the Pine Street Hotel or the Spring Street Hotel to start cluttering up the charm of our city. So that's an example. And these things can be measured, and I really am very proud of the staff for creating, and Ryan in particular, for creating these goals and giving an ability for us to measure it in the future, especially the council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Linda George. Sharon, this one's for Sharon. Sharon Roden's next. Sharon, SMART goals. What do they stand for, and when did staff start this new method of achieving goals?
Linda answered part of that, but prior to this year, the budget projects were not clear as to timeline, and goals were set too high. This year, they had more transparency, measurable, achievable goals, and designate who is responsible for these projects. We had workshops inclusive of council, staff, community, and stakeholders such as Main Street, the Chamber, Wine Country Alliance, and Travel Paso. All of those ideas were incorporated with their input as well.
Thank you very much, Sharon. And Chris Beal, same question. SMART goals. What do they stand for, and when did staff start this new method of achieving goals?
Great. Everybody sort of iterated and or talked about the definition. I actually have used SMART goals for a long time when I worked for the Central Coast Vineyard team. We use that in terms of grant writing, strategic planning. It's one thing to say, I want to solve world hunger. It's another thing to be critical of that and identify some timelines. And is it achievable? Is it realistic? Is there a time limit on that? So I think it's a very helpful framework to be organizing our goals for the city. This was a 2-year goal setting process, and there was significant, stakeholder input and engagement. It sort of, the details sort of fit under a handful of high-level concepts that I think are valuable. What I noticed in the process is that I would have liked to have seen a little bit more participation from a little bit more diverse constituency of our town. I don't think kind of the next generation or working families, I'm not sure if their needs were being represented in that process. But the goal setting process itself is so important, because that is going to inform the budget process. And really, as a council member, that's the council member's jobs, to be adopting the goals, adopting the budgets, make sure they match, make sure they fit what the community needs. These really kind of high-level, directional, efforts by the council. And it's important because there's some consistency in that. A 2-year goal-setting process will continue and will be, fixed regardless if there's change in staff or change on the council. It allows some consistency for the city's business.
Thank you very much, Chris Beal. And Sharon, you're going to go first on this question. There continues to be discussions as to the company that was selected by the City Council for the fixed-base operator, known as FBO, at our Paso Robles Airport. Who would you have selected, and why?
Well, of course, I was part of that selection, but I think sometimes people forget that there were 3 committees plus the council involved with this. one of the committees was the Airport Commission, and it had a vote of 6-5. The other was an interview committee, and they voted 4-3. The ad hoc committee was a 3-1 vote, all in favor of Lloyd's. And I think why the first two were very close is if you looked at the proposals, they were very close. In fact, the first year earnings to the city, I think Lloyd's was maybe $1,000 more than ACI. So throughout the process, when prior to getting on the ad hoc committee, I did a lot of legwork. When the lobbying aspect of the RFP was lifted, I went down and I spent time with Bill Borgsmiller and saw his place, and it's beautiful. He does a great job. I spent time with Ryan Crowell and Steve that works with Lloyd's. I went over and saw theirs. So I spent a lot of time and energy on that, and plus I went out to the airport and I interviewed people who actually do business at the airport. And hands down, everybody was in favor of Lloyd's and the experiences they had with them. There were a couple of issues that came up during those discussions that I brought up in the ad hoc committee once I was appointed there. I don't like rumor and innuendo, so there had been some scuttlebutt that there were cease and desist letters. And so my question to the attorney and to the consultant, are there any legal matters or cease and desist letters that either company has gotten at any place of work, whether it's Bakersfield, the other airports that ACI is at, or Paso Robles? They, in fact, came back that there were 2 cease and desist letters to ACI. One was about concern the mechanic, which was a contractual obligation with the city as being an FBO. The other was a cease and desist letter for counteracting lobbying of the city council and or staff. That, along with Mr. Borgsmiller stepping up to the microphone at one point and declaring that Lloyd's was actually going to be selling, was found not to be true, and he actually admitted that during the city council meeting, that that was not a true thing, that he had heard and passed it along, but it was in fact not true. Interviews with the airport people, also some of the issues that had occurred during ACI's time there, not significant, but it was just one more little mark. But what it really came down to was ACI has an excellent company, but their impetus are jets. No doubt about it. I mean, that is where the money is for a lot of people, and they do a great job. But they can also work on the general aviation piston type planes. So can Lloyd's. But most of their concern, or most of their impetus, was towards general aviation. But they can work on jets, and one of the ones they worked on was Air Force One, and the accompanying jets with them. They serviced it. So as far as it relates to Paso Robles and what I saw for each vision from each individual or each company, Lloyd's really tied into what our vision for Paso Robles is in the near future, and I think and beyond. They have the capabilities to move into the jet industry just as ACI does. But for us right now, ACI was not as palatable for working with as Lloyd's was because of some of the issues we'd had. So that was the main reason that I went with Lloyd's. And with a 3-1 decision on the ad hoc and 3-1 decision on the city council with 1 abstention, I think we all pretty much agreed with the same information we got.
Thank you very much, Sharon. And now, Chris Beal, same question. There continues to be discussion as to the company that was selected by the city council for the FBO at our Paso Robles Airport. Who would you have selected and why?
Right. So, again, a lot of people have been talking with me about this, and I tried to sort of reconstruct what the whole conversation was and kind of the RFP process. And I was surprised to find out that the ad hoc didn't have any minutes, actually. And I don't think that's a legal requirement, so I think that's okay. But I think for a decision of this magnitude, it would have been prudent to have some record about what the conversation was, what the information presented, and things like that. So there was a lot of information in terms of their packets and, what the applicants presented. It was not clear to me how the different criteria were ranked. So, for example, if you have a committee of 5 and a few people think one criteria is really, really important, then they're going to rank that proposal accordingly. And if you have the other part of the group that thinks another criteria is important, then that's going to be driving their decision. It didn't really look like there was consensus. I mean, in the first couple of votes, it was similar. But again, I really value process. But the process needs to be, I think, have some records to it so that we know exactly what the conversation was. And, all things, I know that there's been talk about the jet servicing and being able to be more in line with the spaceport and things like that. Those are certainly considerations. All things being equal, if the criteria were the same, if there had to be a tiebreaker, I would have gone with the local company. So,
thank you very much, Chris Beal. And Linda George, same question. There continues to be discussion as to the company that was selected by the City Council for the FBO at our Paso Robles Airport. Who would you have selected and why?
Well, Karen, thank you for the question. And I really believe at this point it is a moot point question. I don't even know why it's being asked, because last Tuesday, the incumbent just voted for a company that is out of our local economy. For the solid answer, jobs, jobs, jobs. I am a labor specialist. I fight for labor, small businesses. And without a single solitary doubt, I would have picked ACI Jet just to keep the jobs local and our economy booming. Now, the fact that, and you will hear me say that over and over again, but the fact, I think I have more questions than I have comments, because if there are no minutes, I didn't know that until today. That is absolutely horrible, because we do not know what was discussed. When I looked at the contracts and the presentation, without a doubt, it was heavily biased to Lloyd's. There were people removed from some of these committees and restructured, and that's when the contracts were more towards Lloyd's. For me, I'm glad that the incumbent brought this up, because she has said this many times, or she said this once, that the airport is her pet project. But not only that, she's tried to impose on our local fire department, asking the fire marshal to inspect these hangars. These are private hangars. I have submitted to her respectfully that she could get the checklist herself and review these hangars, or they can hire somebody at the airport. But moreover, my bigger concern is the crowd that keeps here with the airport. The question, if you ask it to a small engine jet or a small engine piston, or opposed to a jet, you're going to get two entirely different answers from those pilots. And that was confirmed last night. If you want to have a small plane, Lloyd's is great. If you want jets, you hire ACI Jet. Well, we should have never taken those jobs away locally. And even in the last council meeting, I had a Kendall Pearson harass me in the crowd. And it took me a day to find...
I'm sorry, I witnessed you turning around and taking pictures of them.
No.
They didn't talk to you.
Excuse me?
I watched her.
Yeah, but let her finish speaking, then if you want to respond...
I don't know what it's about. I just started to twist around and start talking to them, taking pictures of them.
Yeah, but don't interrupt in the middle. You can talk after she finishes hers. As to the company that was selected by the City Council for the FBO at our Paso Robles Airport, who would you have selected and why? And you were done.
I was actually going to finish with this. Tuesday night, I had an incident with Kendall Pearson. I take pictures every time I'm at City Council. You can go look at my Facebook page. I don't care if I'm at the Residency Academy. I am documenting my campaign. Well, I was harassed by him. He told me I was creepy and weird for taking pictures. I was rude. He continued on. At first, I thought it was a joke. He continued on, and I said, okay, sir, well, I take pictures because there's no video. He continued on. I waved down Sergeant Lair, who was sitting in the room. And push come to shove, in the end, I decided to leave the meeting because it was safer for me. To find out the next day, it's Kendall Pearson. Now, somebody looked up his website last night, and what do we see on slide 17? A wonderful jet. No wonder why he came for me. He is a very big supporter of Roden and the airport. And I want to just finish with this. She has just said this all herself in her first statement. She has made the airport her pet project, and she has done nothing else since she's been sitting in that seat since November.
But Sharon,
vote against the people.
Sharon, you get to respond to, we're still on the same question, your response.
First of all, a couple of things. One, the airport is city property, so I wouldn't go onto the city property and do inspections. That actually is under the purview of the fire department.
No, it's not.
The whole Kendall Pearson thing, I can't speak to what happened. All I saw was from my seat, her turned around in her seat, taking pictures, and people not being happy about that. I don't know that I'd be happy about that myself, and I just want to ask two-part here. One, you did make mention that, Linda, that I responded to one of your emails about the airport. When you sent me the AI-generated letter about supporting ACI, who, by the way, work on wonderful aircraft, that makes no difference. And I asked you what experience you had with ACI. You said, Ms. Roden, you do not want me involved in the airport contract debacle, LOL. I sent the letter that was created and have not worked with this company. So you also said, I don't know what it means when a company goes behind a council's back and sets up a website to persuade us constituents, to persuade you to pick them. So that was both ACI, and I don't know what your comment about wonderful aircraft with Lloyd's, because both of them work on wonderful. Lloyd's works on Hearst Corporations. ACI works on a whole lot of jets as well. Both of them do piston as well. But the other question is, did either of you actually read the proposals from front to back?
Okay, and I want to get to the next question.
I just want that followed up because we're referring to proposals.
Did you read the so Chris says that she did. Chris Beal did read it. And make it quick, Linda. Did you read it? Do you want to respond? Make it quick.
Read it. I read everything on ACI versus...
The proposals. Did you read the proposals?
They weren't available to me at the time, or I would have.
You haven't read them since.
Regardless, didn't you just sell your farm to the wonderful company?
Let's go on to the next. Let's go on to the next.
I don't know what that intimation was about, but okay.
Okay, Chris Beal, how would you describe your decision-making and leadership style?
Karen, how would you describe it? I actually think that this conversation that we're having here is very revealing, and I think it speaks to a little bit of a contrast we have. Again, like I mentioned before, I ran a nonprofit that worked with environmentalists, farmers, government agencies, and a lot of times we didn't agree, and we had to get together to work on common solutions. And I hadn't realized it at the time that was a skill, but now in hindsight, I realize that that's a skill. And, with things going on in the city, I feel it's really important that we are talking with people that have different ideas that we do, that we are intentionally reaching outside of our silos so that we are getting a broad perspective about what the needs are in this town. I think it's so important because I think some of the issues that come up are very siloed and are very specific to certain people in the town. When I'm knocking on doors and talking to people, You know, what I'm not hearing in this conversation where there's some bickering happening, I'm not hearing things about housing. I heard a little bit about jobs. I'm not hearing anything about like workforce development and career pathways for our residents. I'm not hearing about places and spaces for our youth. You know, regardless of how old you are, there are people that are really upset that their families and their children and their grandchildren have to move, right? There are young people that don't feel like they can stay here. So in terms of my leadership style, I'm engaging because I want to understand, appreciate, recognize, and acknowledge all of the different perspectives. And I'm certainly respectful in how I try to bring these groups together and move things forward.
Thank you very much, Chris Beal. Linda George, same question. How would you describe your decision-making and leadership style?
Hi, Karen. Thanks again for the question. Well, right. I had to relinquish. I have a national committee and a statewide committee fighting against the PRO Act and AB5. And I have a lot of testimonials. If you go onto my website, they will tell you exactly how I work. But I love to grab people that I've never met before. And my biggest joy in life is recreating activists and people who will stand up for their rights. And so I make sure that I am encouraging, that I give all the tips that I can when someone's working towards something. You know, people say that I'm a tireless advocate and leader deeply dedicated to promote justice and uplift the community. She's proven government experience and will work tirelessly, and that is absolutely true. I only sleep 3 hours sometimes a night. I'm either fighting AB5 for independent contractors or the PRO Act, or I'm fighting against Gavin Newsom. I worked on the Recall Gavin Newsom campaign. I've worked with Congressman Kevin Kiley regarding getting the independent contractor jobs. So I can be a leader and a person in the group. So I like to lead by example.
Thank you very much, Linda George. Sharon Roden, same question. How would you describe your decision-making and leadership style?
I use a common sense approach. I'm very data-driven, honest and transparent approach, utilizing diverse input from community and experienced leaders, whether it's in governing, in housing. The rental housing study, consistent with recent city council goals from the budget. We have an economic development strategic plan, and we work with the Paso Robles Housing Authority, and we've actually designated several areas, 20 some odd areas for development and possible housing developments for working with Paso Robles Housing Authority. I try to take everybody's information in, but my vote is my vote. Nobody controls that vote. I have just always worked with, I've got a long history of working with people in the farming industry for 30 and 40 years. And you do that based upon a respect for one another, respect for opinions, and being honest and truthful, and obeying your contracts. I worked with an 18-person board for American pistachio growers, testifying before the International Trade Commission on tariffs. We went through drought, we went through pricing indexes, we went through issues that affected our industry not only statewide but internationally. And we worked together to find those solutions.
Thank you very much, Sharon Roden. And now a new question, this one, Linda, you're going to go first. Linda George, what department uses most of the budget? Number of staff, and what would you do to try to cut back those expenses?
Thanks, Karen, for the question once again. I'm really happy to be here. This is very exciting and fun. And the answer is very simple for me. The utilities department takes the majority of our budget. There's 48 staff that work there, and I would do absolutely nothing to cut them back. And it's just that simple. They are a dynamite team. I have been honored to meet them, speaking about a 1-hour class. Residence Academy is the first time Paso Robles has held a Residence Academy. And I am honored to be one of the 15 that were chosen to be on this academy. And we have been able to ask every staff member every question under the book. Last night was with Warren Frace. So my point being is that I think after touring the water plant and getting to know Christopher, absolutely nothing. I would absolutely look for other ways to cut the budget if needed or for anything like that. But I wouldn't touch the utilities.
Thank you very much, Linda George. Same question, Sharon Roden. What department uses most of the budget, number of staff, and what would you do to try to cut back those expenses?
Yeah, I don't think Linda answered her own question about what she would choose to cut back. But if the reference was to the general fund, the police make up $18 million out of $60 million. I'm not going to cut the police and fire department. In fact, we're understaffed in the police by probably half. We've only got 40 officers, and we should have 70 to 80. Of the total budget, it's about $170 million. The enterprise fund is the overall highest at 52. But we can't cut wastewater and solid waste and airport operations. And most people usually go to parks and rec or library. And I look at those as being an extremely valuable asset to the city and to the people of our community. I would not want to go there. Really, what leaves for me would probably be public works related to not upgrading stucco on buildings, paving parking lots, or expansion of street lighting. I think that's the only go-to place that we might have any kind of areas where we could actually cut a budget.
Thank you very much, Sharon Roden. And now we're at Chris Beal. Same question. What department uses most of the budget, number of staff, and what would you do to try to cut back those expenses?
Yeah, I love having budget conversations because I'm actually a big fan of the 250-page document to go through to try to understand. The city recently put out a summary document that's very nice. It's got pie charts, and it's very digestible. It's the 250 pages into a digestible report. Again, you can find those online at prcity.com. And what's important to understand about these municipal budgets is that there are different buckets of money. There are different expenses. Things go by department. In the 250-page report, you can see function, fund, source. They basically break down this budget in about 10 different ways so that you can make sense of it. What wasn't mentioned earlier is utilities actually is paid for, right? That's an enterprise fund. So that is not, it pays for itself. You know, the top buckets of expenses in our budget are, the utilities, if you batch together public safety, and then also public works. Again, as if you step back from that and say, well, does that make sense? Is that really what our community cares about? That's what the conversation should be. And so I'm getting cut off here. I'm getting the hook.
As a member of the city council, this is to you, Sharon, as a member of the city council, which are paid, well, they're paid a stipend, every employee of the city must undergo a background check. Would you be in favor of requiring background checks for sitting city council members as well as those who may campaign for those seats? If not, why?
Yeah, I was, we're employees of the city as well, and yet we don't have to undergo background checks like everybody else. And this actually came out of another email that I received from Linda, dated July 16th of this last year. She'd reached out to me with a concern that something to do with Clive Pender and an investigation or a background check he was doing, and found a video of some sort. And she had asked me or said that she thought that I had passed it along to him. I wrote back to her and told her I had nothing to do with that. I don't know what all of that is about. But she also stated that I needed to, call my people off. And I said, well, I don't have any people to call off, but I'm certainly not the boss of my wife. That's for darn sure. But it brought to my attention with backgrounds, it does make sense. Why aren't we doing background checks? We deal with a tremendous amount of money and responsibility in this city. We deal with police and fire. We deal with contracts. We deal with budgets. We should at least have some familiarity of running businesses or budgets or anything to do with employees, especially, and working not just in a union labor position, but also working with employees on a day-to-day basis, knowing how to communicate and to reach solutions. So I think it would be a good idea. I would just submit to a background check today.
Thank you very much, Sharon Roden. And we're only have a short time for this now. Chris Beal, same question. Should city council members or people running for city council be required to get a background check?
Yeah, I think this is a legal issue, and I don't have any expertise in it. I think it could raise some questions about fairness or privacy rights, possible discrimination. I certainly would be open to it, but I don't think it's really in our purview.
Okay, Linda George, I'm asking you the same question. Should city council members and also candidates be required to get background checks if they're on the city council or to run for office?
Okay, thank you, Karen, once again. I'm actually frankly alarmed at this question that the incumbent does not understand. The Secretary of State makes election rules. If the Secretary of State wanted background checks, that is for the state capitol and our legislatures to create those laws. Meanwhile, we are elected by the people. I understand you are appointed and you probably perceive it as a job, but it's not. You are elected by the people with a modest compensation to represent the people, not your personal interests. I would be more interested in getting tight conflict of interest checks instead. That way we can know who's paying to play in this county. And that is transparency. We need to have transparency on this council, and we need to know who's doing what. And that is who I am.
Thank you very much, Linda George. And now you each have about 2 minutes, a little bit longer than I thought. And Sharon, you are first. You can now reiterate anything you didn't get out. You can tell us again why you're the best candidate and why you're running, and anything that you would like to add to things that have been said.
Well, it's all our choice to be here in this position and running for this. I've been met with a lot of challenges, but I think I've delved into everything, and I take responsibility, full responsibility for every decision I made, and it was made on a hearing everyone speak, everyone's attitudes, everyone's inclinations, data-driven, and yet I made up my own mind based upon all that information to the best of my ability. I represent everybody in this city, even though I'm just running for District 1. And we have a diversified group of people in my district that I relish. One of the things that we didn't hit upon was our Hispanic community. And I actually went to the COO of the Fair Board back in June to ask if we could get bus runs to Sherwood and to Oak Park. These people work hard for their money, and they spend a lot of money at the fair. And I was told nothing could be done then, and I actually even reached out to Dee Lacey as being on the board and asked if they couldn't discuss that coming up. We need to support our people in this community in a lot of different ways, and that's just a small inkling of some of the things that I would like to do within this community.
Thank you very much, Sharon Roden. And now Chris Beal. again, anything you didn't answer, and again, why you were running, and a little bit about yourself.
Right. There's a couple things that really distinguish me from the other candidates. I have a long history of community service here. I started bilingual education programs for farm workers. And that was probably 20 plus years ago. I started the Juan Navarez scholarship program for first-time college students. My history and connection to the community, to the families, to workers in this community goes back a long time, long before I was a candidate. And that's important because I can ground truth and really reality check what the issues are. You will see me at nonprofit events, volunteering, setting up chairs, putting away tables. Sometimes I do photography for nonprofit events. You'll see me at committee meetings relating to school issues and the closure of Georgia Brown. I have a different connection to this community than both of my opponents, and that actually puts me in a unique position to bring a new voice to the council to help represent people that are currently underrepresented on the council. So I would encourage anybody to check out my website, reach out anytime, chrisbealforcitycouncil.com. I love this town. I love dressing up for Pioneer Day, and I love being able to eat street tacos today and Thai food in Paso Robles. It's really, really a beautiful, beautiful place. But this is the time that we need to be mindful about the kind of town that we're leaving behind for the next generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris Beal. Thank you for being here today. Thank you, Sharon, for being here today. Linda, you're the last one. Can you tell us a little bit about why you're running and anything you were not able to get out in the beginning of the show?
Well, once again, thank you, Karen. And Roblins of District 1, I don't know if you feel this, but I'm feeling a Kamala Harris vibe from the incumbent. If any of these measures fail, I-24 or anything, it's going to be by her own decision-making. The fact that BBK, she voted against BBK, against the people, for BBK to reimburse. I'm 3 parking tickets in. I would like my money back. And let me remind you, everything she's voted on has been either an illegal program or questionable characters involved and switching of committee members and things like that. She's not solo to this. We have the same issue with Gregory and other people on the council. So what I would like to say to you, Roblins, there is the incumbent, there's a new voice, and then there's the right choice. And that would be Linda George, Pinky for Paso. Vote George, District 1, because I promise you one thing. I care nothing about you and what you want for this district, and I want to see Spring Street grow with the rest of the city. And I hope that none of the decisions that were made by the incumbent fail our city. I really do, because I do not believe that those decisions were made independently in any fashion. The rubber stamping must stop at this council. This toxicity of the city manager is ending, and I look forward. I've been working with Chief North, Chief Harris for the last 4 months, the homeless, everybody. And I am ready to dig in and make District 1 the best. Thank you.
And I want to thank everyone who has been listening. Next week, we're not going to be doing debates. We are going to go back into debates the week after, the first week of October. I'm going to start on Wednesday, the first week of October, with the Atascadero City Council debates. I'm attempting to get the school board debate for Atascadero Unified School District on Tuesday, but I'm still having trouble getting a couple of the candidates to give me a call and confirm. So if you know a candidate, tell them. Call Karen, 805-234-1703. Next week, I am still debating what show I'm going to have on Wednesday. And on Thursday, I am going to be out for the day, a very minor procedure. And I will have Eric Gorham. He will be taking over the show on that date. I want to thank you, Sharon, for being here today.
Thank you.
I want to thank you, Chris, for being here today.
Thank you.
And I want to thank you, Linda George, for being here today.
Thank you, Karen. It was a pleasure to meet you.